Hello and welcome to the Perth Gaming Crew Show. My name is Jonathan, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Johnny. Johnny, how are you doing today?
No, I'm doing really well, John. It's great to be here at the almost the end of March, and it's definitely been a banger of a month. We got our first series spotlight episode of the year just a couple of weeks ago, and thanks again to Gemma from Pure Nintendo for lending her wealth of Zelda expertise to that discussion a couple of weeks back. And we're here today to cover our first console retrospective of the year. So I'm pretty excited.
Can't wait. And look, people of Perth and Beyond, as you already know, we tend to be a Nintendo-heavy podcast because Johnny and I have a Switch too, and Tim too. And although we have covered some PlayStation and Xbox content, there is one little-known console maker from back in the day that we have not given the time to, and we've decided it is time for us to reignite that console war. So today we are doing our Sega Mega Drive console spotlight. We're going to talk a bit about the history of the console, some of its features, our own experiences, but also a list of 7 games that I believe are exclusive to the system, Johnny, just to highlight some of the amazing games that we did and didn't play growing up being kids of the Nintendo universe. And just a shout out to Tim. He was super pumped to join us today, as he usually does, but he's fallen sick. But not to worry, who knows, maybe we'll do a Sega Mega Drive extended version, just looking at some games down the track. But what can we say? The Sega Mega Drive is an absolutely influential console in our lives and in history today. Of course, Sega doesn't make any of the big consoles that we compete to get these days, and that's due to the console wars, and there's a few things we'll go into there. You can still get a Sega Mega Drive Mini or a Sega Genesis Mini on eBay or cash converters somewhere. So I think you should get in on that, people of Perth and Beyond. If not, the games are available on the now delisted Sega Genesis collection, where there are hard copies available, and of course on the Nintendo Switch online service. But let's start with some really key facts and stats, because people of Perth and Beyond, if you weren't there, Johnny and I were. The console wars between the Super Nintendo, the brand spanking new 32-bit console, and Sega Mega Drive system, Sega Genesis in North America, was absolutely alight and alive. And to the kid versions of us, can you imagine the kid versions of us? We were in those console wars. We were fighting them. We were recruiting. We were saying which console was the best. And let me tell you, we didn't think it was the Sega Mega Drive. And we're here to say sorry, but we're here to reignite the war. So, a couple of key facts.
We're going behind the enemy lines of the 90s console war, aren't we, today?
I think today is the white flag. It's like, look, we're really sorry we got involved in the war 20-odd years ago. We wish we did not participate, and we actually think Sega Mega Drive games are really cool. And look, on that, people of Perth, the way we're approaching this today is that Johnny and I have varied experiences with the Sega Mega Drive growing up. We didn't get into them as much as we did with our Super Nintendos. So we're going to try and give a partially nostalgic, but very much a realistic view of the console and the games these days. But the Sega Mega Drive was released in 1998 in Japan, 1999 in North America, and it made it to Australian shores in 1990. It is a 16-bit console, 31 million units sold, which is a huge amount. Johnny, I was looking at the stats, and the Super Nintendo sold 49 million units, so it was a very close competitor, and it's kind of hard to believe these days where we see big gaps in console generations and they're not being a Sega console these days.
It's quite impressive because the Sega Mega Drive wasn't a really strong performer in its home market of Japan for the Tokyo-based Sega Corporation, but where they really were successful was in particularly in the North American market. Sega did really, really well and really got a foothold.
Yes, absolutely. And then as the Sega Mega Drive's lifespan went on, we did see some additions like the Sega CD. With CDs, people of Perth, can you remember those days when CDs came out? We were all recording music and saving audio and video files. But also there was a modem that was also released, which we'll come back to. But for me, like I remember just like the Sega Mega Drive arriving on shores, a big black box, a big black console. Johnny, are there any other key facts and stats you want to share with the people of Perth and Beyond?
Yeah, I was just looking at the software units of sale for software attached to the Mega Drive, and it's pretty incredible. It's somewhere around like over 570 million units globally, which is full on. It's amazing, and I think part of their success was the console was bundled with Sonic the Hedgehog, the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, which made that game a real system seller. Like that bundle just was very, very popular and was very successful in various parts of the world.
I was reading that the original Sonic the Hedgehog on the Mega Drive sold 15 million copies, and then the sequel sold about 7. And it's kind of interesting that people didn't buy in as much for the second game as they did the first, but it just shows, like, for people who are new to gaming these days, like, Sonic's everywhere. He's in the movies, Sonic racing games, Sonic 2D, 3D platformers, which aren't as big as the Mario games, but they're certainly of quality, and there is a hardcore Sega fan base existing and growing that get into all of those games. So very grateful for that huge legacy around Sonic. And on that, it is the 35th anniversary of Sonic, so we're going to give Sonic a little bit more love later on. But the Sega Mega Drive really stood out compared to the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo had its 4 different colored buttons, its L&R shoulder buttons. The Sega Mega Drive was a little bit different, hey, Johnny, and probably one of the unique features was the controller itself.
Yeah, and actually it arrived quite a bit in advance of the Super Nintendo, so it was in fact very much the first real competition for the NES in the late 80s, very early 90s, before the Super Nintendo came along. One of the I guess the features that made it stand out was the evolution on controllers, because obviously the NES controller was it had its limitations, the 2 buttons. And I remember back in the day, friends who had the Sega Mega Drive would always point out, there are three buttons. We got an extra button. And it was also like the curved design, which obviously the Super Nintendo.
And the D-pad, Johnny, followed. Too. The D-pad with the circular aspect around it,
the circular
just like
pad. Yeah. So, and then as you've mentioned, there was also the modular design. So it had over the course of its lifetime, it had all the add-ons, like you've mentioned, the CD. There was also the 32X add-on, the modem, which you mentioned. So it was interesting in that way, because that was a very different approach to what Nintendo was doing with its consoles. And I think the big thing that I guess brought great appeal to the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis in North America was that its graphic capabilities made it very adept at bringing in and very convenient to bring in the Sega developed arcade titles to the home console market. So games like Golden Axe and Altered Beast, those which we're going to talk about more shortly, that was one of the standout features of the Sega Mega Drive, is that those arcade experience games were readily available through the Sega console.
I think I was reading also that, so with the Sega Mega Drive, it also got ports of really popular arcade games, like you're saying, like Golden Axe. Mortal Kombat, for example, which came to the Sega Mega Drive, I was reading, outsold the Super Nintendo version 3-1, simply because it had the attractive gore element, the fatalities that weren't in the Super Nintendo version. I mean, if you weren't there, people of Perth and Beyond, this was really an era of console wars. This was the time where people were seeing games in the arcades. I mean, you didn't really have the internet with a lot of information going on with smartphones. You had a couple of consoles in the stores, and the other access you had to games like Golden Axe, like Mortal Kombat, was in the arcades. You would go down to the cinemas or your local shopping centre, and you'd have to fork out the dollars to play it. And look, it's expensive to play arcades, and you might get a game or two in, and often arcade games were designed to suck your money out, let you play a little bit, kind of a bit of a teaser experience. So the Sega Mega Drive really offered some fantastic conversions from the arcade. Games like Golden Axe, games like Mortal Kombat 2. And then I think the Sega Mega Drive also got its own Super Street Fighter 2 version, which is a championship edition, which showcased those three buttons in particular. So the Sega Mega Drive had so much going for it. And just on that, Johnny, it makes me think back like to me as a kid. Like I was so young at that time. I was probably, God, I don't know, maybe 10 or something like that. But I think about the two consoles that were available and our experiences with the Sega Mega Drive versus the Super Nintendo. What were your experiences growing up like, and why? How did you access the Sega Mega Drive?
Yeah, so when I grew up, as we've spoken many times on the show, I was very much an NES kid and then eventually got a Super Nintendo. So I was always very rusted on to Nintendo. But I did get to experience a lot of the Sega systems, including the Mega Drive, but also the predecessor, the Master System, when I would go visit friends or cousins' houses. And there was, I remember probably where I played most Sega systems was at my dad's godson and his twin brother. They had the Sega systems, and we would regularly go visit them, and we'd play. I remember playing the Sonic games extensively. Definitely, I probably even the first Streets of Rage game. There's also like friends, like as we've mentioned in our special on the NES this time last year, the Sega systems were really, really popular in Australia. And so I just remember at school, in late primary school, early high school, as Nintendo fans, I remember being outnumbered.
Interesting. Wow.
And like people would point out like, Mortal Kombat's got blood. Your Mortal Kombat doesn't. And like, that was like the schoolyard trash talk.
That was the biggest insult you could ever experience as a kid, isn't it? Like seriously, you've got the weak Mortal Kombat or the wrong Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, the wrong Mortal Kombat.
Nothing worse.
But yeah, I think at that time I don't remember experiencing too much of the sort of aggressive console war marketing that is well documented now, like all the commercials, like all the Sega does what Nintendon't, and stuff like, it's got blast processing, which wasn't really a thing. It was just marketing.
I think anything they said at that time impressed us because we didn't understand the tech stuff, did we?
Like even like the whole 16-bit thing, like we didn't really know what bits were. We didn't know what as kids like. What the hell is a bit? But it was like like I had NES and it's only 8-bit, and I was like ashamed because mates who got the 16-bit Sega Mega Drive. It was it's so funny when you think back on it now, but back when you were kids, like it was real. It was like you had to, had to defend. I felt like I needed to defend Mario, defend Mario's honor in the schoolyard. But no, in terms of that marketing, I don't think I experienced most at that time, with one exception, and that is in comic books, because around the time that I was playing 16-bit consoles is when I was also collecting comic books, and a lot of both Sega and Nintendo and other video game marketing was littered through the pages of 90s comic books. But later in life, I became very familiar with the hilarity of some of the console wars marketing, and it is really funny. If you go back and watch some of those commercials, they're really hilarious.
Short, sharp, and in your face, and they really have active digs at each other. My experience of just how I saw the Sega Mega Drive as a kid was similar. Well, in some ways, different to yours. I definitely saw it as like the edgier console, and I think that was very true. Like a lot of the games were, Mortal Kombat with blood, the packing game of Altered Beast versus the packing game of Duck Hunt or Mario. And the graphics, I remember at the time thinking graphically it didn't look as good as my Super Nintendo, and thinking, my Super Nintendo's better. And look, in some ways I still feel that way. I think there's a little bit more complexity or sophistication or clear definition to the Super Nintendo games. But the Sega Mega Drive... Oh, go ahead, Johnny, yeah.
I was just going to say, yeah, the Super Nintendo probably had the superior color palette, and that's probably has a lot to do with it is partly nostalgia, but it's also, I think it's well documented now that the Super Nintendo had a superior color palette to the Genesis Mega Drive.
See, I think I noticed that at the time, but regardless of that, like the Sega Mega Drive was on shelves, like it was playable in like your Targets, your Myers, all that stuff. And I definitely looked at that console with envy, going, look, the cartridges look really cool, like the black box with like the crisscrosses. And I remember the Sega Master System boxes actually looked really cool. And I had played a bit of that as a kid growing up too at a friend's house. David Goldsmith, I know you watch your show sometimes. Loved your Sega Master System. Missed out. Good times, bro. Yeah, with the Sega Mega Drive though, like, it still had like some really, I guess, edgy games, and I was probably a bit young to get into the kind of more grown-up, cool games, even though I really liked Mortal Kombat. It was also clearly defined by its exclusives. So, like, we do see exclusives on consoles, and Nintendo in particular, Nintendo has stuck with that. But, yeah, just the exclusive library is incredible for the Sega Mega Drive when you compare it to the Super Nintendo, which has its own fantastic exclusives. So, look, speaking of, we are going to jump into the games. I did also just want to give a shout out. So, yeah, I didn't have a Sega Mega Drive. I never got to hire one. I knew one friend who had one. I played at his birthday, but my experience is more playing Golden Axe at the arcades and then playing these games in store very briefly. I remember playing Sonic, for example. Oh, Sonic at just like Target or Myer or something, and I didn't like it. Like, I played it for a couple of minutes and I was like, oh, it doesn't look as good, and why am I crashing into these spikes? And, so glad I picked the Super Nintendo because the Sega Mega Drive is crap, as we used to say. Utter crap. That was probably the worst word we said back in the day. Now, there are 7 games that Johnny and I have dug out, and we've picked these games because they are exclusives, they are iconic, and we did set a challenge. We had more games we were going to go through. Unfortunately, Tim couldn't be here. Shout out to you, Tim. Hope you enjoyed today's episode, of course. With the games. Go ahead, Johnny.
I was going to say, shout out to Tim Tim was very active in our preparation for this episode. I had a great session online with Tim earlier in the week. We played a couple of the games we're about to talk about with a mutual friend here in Canberra. It was great fun was had. So thanks to Tim for his solid input into prep for today.
Awesome. So we won't cover as many games as we would have with Tim, but we're going to include some of his experiences with the games that we did cover. When we picked these games, the challenge we set ourselves was to pick a couple of games that we all play, just to go back to and see how we all feel, and then a couple that had stood out to us, whether we wanted to return to them or play them for the first time. And we are giving our honest and brutal thoughts, like the console wars. There's still a bit of Nintendo in all of us, so we're going to absolutely blast these games and pretend we didn't enjoy them. No, we're seriously going to give our honest thoughts about them. We hope we don't offend any Sega Mega Drive fans. And look, as I said, we are slightly envious that you had that childhood too. Johnny, let's start with one of the big ones. And I think it would be wrong to do a Sega Mega Drive special without one of the most famous Sega Mega Drive games of all time, arcade port, Golden Axe. Now, Golden Axe is a bit of a special game because at the time, I remember as a kid thinking, this is like Dungeons and Dragons, this is swords and sorcery, this is all the magic shows that I've seen on TV, finally in video game form. And it looked cool. You could play a barbarian warrior and a dwarf and a barbarian Amazon lady. It was really cool. And you could ride these beasts, fight different types of monsters. It was very gritty. And my memory of this game was playing it on the arcades and just dying within the first couple of minutes because it was so difficult. But Johnny, tell me a little bit about Golden Axe.
Yeah, this one was all about taking your dollar coins. I remember in the arcades back in the day when I was experiencing this in the arcade. But yeah, it's a quintessential Sega Mega Drive title, isn't it?
Mm.
I do have to say, though, after revisiting it recently, that it's not a lot of fun in single player mode. I find that
Not at all.
it's great fun in two player because you can pick two characters that complement each other. So the main character, Axe Battler, he's got a decent attack and a sort of middling kind of magic level. But by himself, it's
middle ground. This is middle ground,
it's
isn't it?
very
Yeah.
kind of basic magic. And then you get the She Barbarian, who's got much
Tyrus
more power.
Flare.
Tyrus Flare's got the more powerful magic attack, but her sword attack is like a bit weak. And then you got the dwarf, which has the strongest
Gilius Thunderhead. What are they?
Gilius Thunderhead. Thunderhead's got a good melee attack, but he's got very weak magic. Garbage magic. So it's I find it's just very difficult to play this game in single player mode because there's no ideal choice to play in single player mode. Where this game is kind of most enjoyable is where you've got a friend, so you can get like a complementary kind of team up going. So I remember early in the week, Tim and our mutual friend of the show were playing as Thunderhead and Flare, and that was a good kind of combination. And they made some solid progress through the game.
That's good.
It was, but yes, I just found as a single player experience, it was, a bit of a letdown. And that's not, firing shots from a console war's perspective. It's just, I think it's just, the game is not designed. I mean, it was probably never meant to really be that it probably wasn't intended as a single player experience. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, I do. And I think, coming back to this now reminds me of that experience of the arcades where I'd play through a stage or half a stage. It's a very hard game and a very basic beat 'em up, like when you compare it to games like Streets of Rage. There's no throwable items. There is good enemy variety, but there's very few moves you can actually do. Like there's a basic attack, you can jump attack, and then you can get on the beasts, which is probably the highlight of the game. The red dragon, the grey dragon. Don't get on the little weird griffin thing with the long tail. That's kind of shit. It's sort of, but this is an arcade game through and through. Like it's very hard. And I was saying off air to you, Johnny, I played as both Thunderhead and Flare. And no, not Thunderhead. I played as Axe Battler and Tyrus Flare, and both of their weapons are just shorter than your average Grunt's weapon. So you'd be hacking away, and then suddenly you'd be hit back. I'm like, hang on, this is not how beat 'em ups work. The number one rule for beat 'em ups is when you're hitting the enemy, that's it. You're comboing, you're doing all this stuff. So that was kind of weird. And then what I also found weird is that you can't grab and throw someone, which is an absolute no-no in these kind of games. But you do it as part of that combo attack. So you'd use any of the characters, like you'd have Gilius Thunderhead, like just hitting away at a giant, then you just pick them up and throw them. Like, whoa, you're pretty tough. And all three characters could do that. I thought that was kind of funny. And then, I guess the standout feature though is the audio visual presentation. Even though it's aged a bit, it does look cool. And the Super Nintendo didn't have anything on offer. Although I have an issue with the screaming skeletons, Johnny. I find it weird that when you beat the skeletons, they scream in agony as they die, just as the humans do. And then even the giants who are decked out in full armor, who, by the way, are completely overpowered compared to your own characters. Let's not kid ourselves here. They scream in agony too. So, it's hard to play single player. I got to stage 7. I fought a giant with a bronze axe. I don't know if he was the golden axe guy. I don't think he was, from what we discussed, Johnny. He hit the ground with lightning, and he's the only enemy who had a special move, so to speak. And I felt that was kind of rigged because he was, everyone's overpowered in this game. But a good game to go back and just re-experience, knowing that this was something I paid dollars for in the arcades, Johnny.
Yeah, bring a friend if you're going to revisit the original Golden Axe, I think is the moral of the story.
Yeah, and I will say I did like Tyrus Flare's magic. The levels of magic, I do need to shout out that the lower levels of magic, there are 2 different types of attacks. So for her, she shoots out like these phoenix imp things. So that's kind of cool. But then she brings in like this massive dragon. If you up your magic, which you should, kick the gnomes, hit the gnomes, steal their food, steal their magic the shit out of your enemy. You should do that. All right, Johnny, we're going to move on to the other game that we played. Did you want to give a little shout out to Streets of Rage 1 though before we talk about Streets of Rage 2?
Yeah, look, I quite like the original Streets of Rage game. It's released in the very early '90s, and it was a beat 'em up made for the console. Like it wasn't an arcade game ported to the Sega Mega Drive. It was a beat 'em up made for the console, and it's got to be up there in terms of beat 'em ups from that era. One thing I just wanted to call out though is that beat 'em ups in the '90s, they became, famous for having like special screen clearing attacks. And in the case of the original Streets of Rage, if you press the button to fire off your screen clearing attack, the screen kind of slides back a few screens, and a police car pulls up, and like someone gets out of the police car and fires like an RPG into the screen and lights everything around you on fire. Except you. Somehow you emerge unscathed. But I thought that was very novel, a very kind of creative choice for the screen clearing attack in a beat 'em up. So the original Streets of Rage is not a bad game at all. I revisited it during the week. I had a lot of fun with it. But I think the sequel is quite an evolution on that original game, and definitely the superior entry.
So Streets of Rage 2 was new to me. It was not one of those games I had experienced, and I had wanted to play it also because it was just so iconic. A massive exclusive, in Streets of Rage 4 had been released in modern consoles maybe 4 or 5 years back. So I knew it was a big one. It was a quintessential Sega Mega Drive experience. I kind of thought, so Streets of Rage 2, Johnny, I like it how it starts with the story where you've got Mr. X has been defeated, and it goes, and but is a powerful word. Like, just goes, he's been defeated, all that stuff, and it goes, but he's back. I think it's like he's back from the dead, or he's just back, and he's more powerful than ever. And that's it. That's the explanation. It's like, okay, you've spent all this time in Streets of Rage 1 with your inappropriately overpowered police rocket launching people to death, and now he's back. Like, he's just, here he is, and you're raging again on the streets, as you do, various parts of the streets, to fight Mr. X and crew. Look, in contrast to Golden Axe, this game holds up so well. The combat is so much more sophisticated. There are grapple moves. I played as Max. I'll come to the characters in a minute, but there's grapple moves, jump kicks, power moves, which suck out your life bar, throwable items like the knife, the lead pipe, pick it up all the time. It's so cool that when you hit with it, it swings back. Johnny, did you notice that? Like, it'll hit the guy behind you and then the one in front of you. It's just awesome. It's so, so good. There's a bit more enemy variety, although weirdly, you do fight the same enemies with the same names, Johnny. So I reckon I've taken down Donovan at least 60 times. And I took down Donovan, and then I was fighting Donovan again in the next screen. I'm like, is this the same Donovan, or is this Donovan's like twin brother? And then it just went on and on. There are a lot of Donovans in that game, Johnny.
Very popular name in 1993, John. That's all.
Fair enough. It all comes together now. I think that all makes sense. I'm sure the booklet explained that one. The characters are just more unique to play. So I played as Max, but Johnny, who did you play as? Tell me who you played as.
Mostly played through as Axel, who's got the sort of he's a carryover from the original game, and he's got like Max is like the swole kind of beefcake character.
Max is awesome,
massive attack, but he's a little bit slower. Axel's kind of got like medium power, but speed is a bit higher. And then there's two other characters. It was
Blaze and Skate.
Blaze is I think a carryover from the first game. I think Blaze was in the first game too.
Yeah, she is.
She's got sort of lower power but higher speed. And then you've got Skate, who's got the weakest power, but it's got the
Yep.
highest speed, and
Yep.
he's like a 90s stereotype. He's on rollerblades, and he's got
He's
like a basketball top, so he's got all the 90s paraphernalia going on at once.
he literally skates around, and his runners are skate, and then he skate. I used skate last night, Johnny, to contrast his playstyle with Max. And he's actually really cool. He's got weak attacks, but he's really quick, which really helps in this game. It's just so novel to watch him skate around, but then he just grabs people and headbutts them in the tummy. I'm like, settle down, mate. I know you're 5 years old, but you've got to calm down. There's enough rage going on already.
Tim and I had a playthrough the other night where he chose skate. I think I'd chosen Max, and we found out it was actually worked as a good combo because skate balances out the poor speed of Max, but you still have the power of Max for some of the harder core enemies. So we had a pretty decent run through our playthrough.
How did you find Max? Because Max was my favourite. His ability to suplex everyone and the damage that he does, and he's slow, but he's probably twice as tall as every character in the game, almost. You just feel like you're the boss in these old beat-em-up games because I've just come off Golden Axe where everyone's 3 times bigger than me, kicks my ass, and now you can play as the power trip character. How did you find Max?
Yeah, he's probably a bit more OP than the other characters. The other characters are a bit because they're higher. Their stats are not in power than they're in the other categories. So Max is if you're doing a 2-player playthrough, you want someone to be controlling Max, I think, to get further through the game, I think.
Well, Streets of Rage 2, definitely recommend it. I mean, Golden Axe is worth trying out, but Streets of Rage 2 does hold up better. Curious to see what the third one's like, and then the modern remake. Johnny, there's one more game that we're all aware of that we need to cover, and we've covered a couple of beat-em-ups to give the comparison, but this one is more like a side-scroller 2D action game, and I just want to premise this with, we didn't see a lot of these on the Super Nintendo. We didn't see a lot of these fantasy, fighting, kind of PG up-rated games. Talk to me about Altered Beast, which was the pack-in Sega Mega Drive game.
This is a hard game. I remember playing this. This game used to beat me up big time. It had a really cool premise. You're a Roman centurion who gets sent. I think it's to rescue the goddess Athena from demons and stuff, and you go through and you fight enemies, and all sorts of freaky shit going on in this game.
2-headed pigs.
And you beat them, and there's particular enemies you defeat to be able to enable different transformations for your avatar in the game. But I have to admit, people of Perth and Beyond, I've never really gotten very far in Altered Beast because it's such a difficult game. I didn't own it at the time back in the day, so I didn't really have many opportunities, and I don't think family, friends, or cousins or the like own this one. So my only experience is in more recent times, but it's never a game that I've gotten the hang of. I don't know, have you played much of this, John?
This is one of the games, kind of like Golden Axe, that stood out to me as a kid, where I was like, oh, I wish I had this game because it just looks so cool. The concept of using this big brutish warrior who grows in muscles as you power up. You just kind of like a regular Joe, and then you get bigger and stronger, and then I think you get bigger and stronger again. There's less clothing on. You feel like you're a WWE wrestler. You're enormous. And there's one more power up to be had per level, which is really the highlight of the game. You can transform into a werewolf or a dragon or a fuzzy bear. I don't remember what the other one is. The transformations are cool because they would add ranged attacks. The dragon, you'd just be floating around, shooting lightning at this giant eye, kind of beholder monster. Very cool looking with this cool electricity sound. But as a game and playing it these days, it's very clunky. Like there's no up and down movement; it's left to right. It's not quite a Contra type game where you just thrown enemies are thrown at you. There's a slower pace to it, but you move really slowly. Like you're quite slow, and the I have to get off my chest, Johnny. The console war is, let's not kid ourselves. There's a really stupid move where you duck and punch up. And I don't know if you remember that, but you just like, and you need it because there's stupid idiots like just jumping at you from the sky. But ducking and punching up just feel, look at that. What is going on there? This kick up is awkward. It's uncomfortable. There we go. Getting bigger. That's better. It always felt good to power up. But I was like you, Johnny. Like I've come back to it and played it through. It's a hard game to go back to. It's very clunky. It's very imprecise. It's not a whole lot of fun. There's not a lot of oomph to the combat. It's more, I think, just the concept that stands out. And I can imagine this being a really cool pack-in game when you get your Sega Mega Drive. You pick this up and then you go pick something else to complement it as well. Yeah, I quite enjoy the fuzzy bear jumping around and just like rolling the crap out of everyone. Quite funny, a lot of fun there. So yeah, that's Altered Beast, but not a highlight. Go for Streets of Rage 2. Johnny, we're going to move on to our individual picks. So we did a couple each. Where would you like to start with yours?
Well, I think I have to take us back to the early 90s and the height of Michael Jackson's popularity. And so, believe it or not, it might be hard to believe now, but at the time when I was in school, there were kids that would say to me, Nintendo's not as good because it doesn't have Michael Jackson's Moonwalker on the Sega Mega Drive. But you have to understand, people of Perth, at this time in the early 90s, it was probably the peak of Michael Jackson's popularity before a lot of the controversies that came later in the 90s. And Michael Jackson was very popular in my age cohort at that time. And so Sega got the license to make a adaptation of the 1998 Michael Jackson sort of anthology film, Moonwalker. And it's sort of, the game is loosely based on the Smooth Criminal segment of that 1998 flick. Very loosely. But a lot of things that happen in that movie do happen in this game, in this really? Sega Mega, which is kind of remarkable. So it's kind of best described as beat 'em up with some light platforming, where Michael, in his Smooth Criminal getup, is going around rescuing kids. And I guess first of all, we've got to address the fact that he's dancing through the game to like clear the screen of enemies. And there are certain conditions in the game if they're met. So if Michael rescues particular children who are like, it's kind of disturbing concept. The kids are like locked in like cabinets and behind doors and stuff.
It's the same kid with the teddy bear. They're all locked in doors at night time. So he's rescuing them with Moonwalker style.
He's got to sort of moonwalk his way to the doors, unlock the doors, and the little child runs out. But after doing that, and then if at the same time a comet goes past the screen, and this is very much what happens in the flick, Michael turns into Mecha Michael, and he's like a mecha version of Michael Jackson, and it's like shooting missiles and stuff like that. It's very bizarre. Having said that, that all happened in the 1988 flick. But the challenge of that element of the game, and I remember I must have played this at a cousin's house, or maybe I played it in a shopping center or something. But the challenge of that element was that if Michael transforms into Mecha Michael, he can't rescue kids, which is the whole, like, to complete stages, you've got to rescue a certain number. Maybe you've got to rescue them all. I can't remember. But yeah, it's a pretty out there game, and it was a game that I have a distinct memory of people in the schoolyard saying, Nintendo's not as good because it doesn't have Moonwalker. But yeah, it's a pretty funny example of a title from the Sega Mega Drive library. Have you ever come across this before, John?
No, I remember reading about it in like a magazine or just picking up the Sega magazine. I never bought the Sega magazine, wouldn't touch it. I just have a read and decide what I didn't like, and that another amazing exclusive that I didn't care for. But it just shows like the power of the Sega Mega Drive library with these really big marketable characters that, like you said, were everywhere. Michael Jackson was everywhere in our household at that time. It was kind of pre-controversy. He was just everywhere, and you could make. This is like the era where you would make movie games or character games. Like we talked about Shaq Fu on the Super Nintendo. I only saw this game for the first time, Johnny, but the fact, it's not wrong that it's called Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, because that's what he's literally doing the entire game. It seems like he's got a normal moonwalk than the actual moonwalk, which is faster. And there sure are a lot of kids locked away that look the exact same that he's rescuing. And then they're sitting on his shoulder while he takes them to safety or whatever he does. It's just like, bizarre kind of movie, cultural, like meta tie-in at that time. I didn't feel like I was missing out on this one. How does it hold up as a game, Johnny? Like, are there like 5 stages? Are there big bosses? I did see a dance routine where there was a screen clearing attack, but as a game, does it hold up well enough? Kind of like the Simpsons games did from that era?
Look, I can't say I've replayed it recently because it's one of those games that is in out in license hell. But yeah, I just have to also call out the fact that this footage has reminded me of Joe Pesci. Was the villain in the movie, and he was as Mr. Big, and I think that was his audition for his role in Home Alone later on. But yeah, no, it's pretty wacky. I almost think that Michael Jackson's Moonwalker walked so that Shaq Fu could run.
Don't know about Shaq Fu running. It's something, that's for sure. All right, we're going to move on. So my first pick had to be Sonic the Hedgehog 2. So I saw Sonic in the department stores because it wasn't in the arcades. And this is a game that I remember saying at the start, like I picked up and I was like, oh, give it a go. It's probably really crap. And then I picked it up and I remember just running along in the Green Hill Zone and I thought, oh, this is cool. It's fast. It's not bad. And then just banging into spikes and going, yeah, I knew Sega games were bad. Like I love my Super Nintendo. Sonic sucks. What a dumb character. It's not even like a real hedgehog, all that kind of stuff you say during the console war era. And that was my experience of Sonic until almost now. I've not bought a 2D Sonic game before or a 3D Sonic game. They looked okay to me, but there's a lot of other games I was more into. So I kind of felt like I needed to reconcile and make peace and face past me and go, come on, what's going on with Sonic here? Let's give it a crack. I'd read that Sonic 2 was just a bit more visually interesting than the first Sonic game, had tails flying around, so went for Sonic. And look, I'm pleased to report this is a really enjoyable overall platforming game. And I do think I missed out not giving this a chance, and of course I couldn't have because I didn't own a Sega Mega Drive. But yeah, I really enjoyed my experience playing Sonic. So I guess the comparison I can give is like the Mario games, like Mario 1, Mario 3, Super Mario World, because, that's kind of like the benchmark, I guess, for me personally with those games. I like the speed. Like, I do like the sense of speed now, like going through the little loops and the half pipes, and the use of 3D is really quite cool. There is like a speed, not power up, but special move you can do where you hold the down button and attack or something, and Sonic goes in a ball and winds up and you let go. And it's just fun. It's just fun watching him go around everywhere. The spikes are still there, so I'm still adjusting to that. I think it's funny because I think about the way Mario games are designed, where it's always clear where you will fall down or where it's really clear there's an enemy you can jump on. Whereas because Sonic is bigger than Mario and the screen is smaller, and you move so quickly, a pitfall of this game, so to speak, is that you can very quickly smash into spikes without knowing what's coming. And I think that is a flaw of the game design here. There are a couple of power-ups, so there's like an invincibility power-up, and then there's one that makes you go even faster, which I really didn't want to use. But yeah, the power-ups didn't have the kind of versatility or change Sonic the way the Mario game ones do. Not necessarily a bad thing, because I think the core gameplay is still pretty good. The way you navigate levels is kind of interesting, because it's not like a Mario game where it's left to right and the screen's scrolling or it stays still. You're going everywhere in this level. You up, down, left, right, and it's kind of easy to get lost until you find these little signposts that you go through, and then eventually you come across to the end of the level where you see the Dr. Robotnik Sonic sign, and you flip that over to beat the level. I like visually how this game looks more than I did at the time, and I still feel like this is my quintessential experience, because I still see even NES games like the original Mario and then Super Mario as being clear, and like you were saying, Johnny, the Super Nintendo having that more vibrant color palette. But I like the style of the Sonic game, but it still has this kind of grittiness. Not is it fuzziness? I don't know what it is to it. Maybe because their Sonic is more detailed than Mario, perhaps, and doesn't hold up as well in some ways. But the stages are really interesting. I hate casinos in games, but the casino levels in this are really fun. It's really cool how there's this beautiful skyline in the background. The contrast in the colors is really nice, and then you just you kind of ping pong like a pinball machine around the level. It's quite clever that way. And then this level that we're seeing here is quite interesting too. It's like a desert level, or Midwest level, or oil refinery or something like that. It just looks really nice overall. And then I think their boss fights are cool, and I think they are better than the Mario game boss fights. So you fight Dr. Robotnik in various versions, and he's got some wacky new machine that comes along, and you essentially jump on him or under him while you're spinning to take him down. They're not overly hard, but I find they're more interesting or engaging than the Mario, like Super Mario 1, Super Mario 3, Super Mario World boss fights for me personally. Yeah, I thought it really holds up. Did you play any of the Sonic Hedgehog games, Johnny, in the second one? Or?
Big time. Played the first two Sonic games a lot with my dad's godson Steve and his twin brother John. Shout out to John and Steve. Hope you guys are doing well if you ever see this. But yeah, we played a lot of Sonic, they're fun games. They're fun games. It's definitely a different cadence to, say, your 2D Mario games. So that takes some getting used to. And you are moving at speed, so you're going to crash into stuff a lot. But it's not really an issue, because you just, as long as you keep collecting your golden rings, you're fine. But yeah, no, I think they were great games, and totally understand that. I totally get why this sold the first Sonic game, and also to some extent the second game. They were like system sellers. I think they got people on board with the Mega Drive.
They kind of personify that concept of the Mega Drive being edgier and faster and looking different to Mario. What do you think about the ring system, Johnny? Like, because with Mario, he'll bump into an enemy, and if he's regular Mario, you die, or if you fall down a pit, you die. But it's quite easy to get mushroom power-ups or flower power-ups and navigate through a system, and those games are considered easier, I think, in modern Mario games for sure. But I personally really enjoyed the ring system, collecting a lot of rings. What did you think compared to like doing that with how Mario gets through a level and survives and all that kind of stuff? Because the rings,
I was terrible at it. I was really bad at the Sonic games, and because I was at that time at home, I was playing Mario 2, Mario 3, eventually Mario World, and it's a very different dynamic. So I found it very difficult to get the hang of the cadence and the making sure you collected enough rings not to die. So I was always struggling with that back in the day. But I can appreciate it for what, like, it's unique kind of innovation, and I totally can get why it was so popular.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting comparison coming from the Nintendo games like we did, but I don't know, you probably found you wired the same way, like we're used to those games.
Yeah.
So it's not that it's a bad game or a good game. It's just like the speed and adjusting to, this is how this is hyper platform
Yeah,
plays. And I can see how people who grew up with Sega Mega Drive love it and they're used to that. And then they go to
yeah.
see Mario and they're like, oh, it's too easy or it's too basic or it's just not for me. So
It's
it's kind
yeah,
of curious.
it's a different, completely different cadence. And there are sections in Mario games where you're running really fast, but
Mm.
it's a different physics. Yeah, that's probably the
Mm.
best way to describe it. Completely different physics.
Definitely. Well, what was your second big game that you picked and why?
All right, so the other game which I was playing over the last couple of weeks was this really odd platformer from kind of the end of the Sega Mega Drive generation. It actually only released in like 1995, so the Mega Drive by this point was really on its way out, and it wasn't long after this game released that it was superseded by the Sega Saturn, I think. Um, it's an odd platformer called Ristar or Ristar. I think there's a bit of controversy, no, not controversy, but different interpretations of how you even say the name of the game. But it's such a weird, it's a weird game. Like you're playing as this star character with limbs.
Starface.
Yeah, he's got like like a starfish kind of face or body, and I feel like maybe this was meant to be like Sega's answer to Kirby because he doesn't Ristar doesn't jump on characters to defeat them. He grabs them with these like long kind of elastic arms and does this kind of like headbutt attack. It's
Mm.
a really weird mechanic. I mean, it's a beautiful game. It's like it. I think it's really pushing the color palette of the Sega Mega Drive, Sega Genesis to its limits. And it's got like a pleasing kind of happy-go-lucky kind of chirpy soundtrack playing along in the background. Um, yeah, but I just thought it was really kind of just a weird game that I didn't really expect to encounter in the Sega Mega Drive library because you tend to associate platformers more with the Nintendo systems.
Mm.
So, and because up until we were planning this episode, I was playing a lot of 2D Zelda, I felt like just a real like palate cleanser. So I thought I'll play around with this platformer from the end of the Sega Mega Drive generation for a change. I enjoyed it. It's just a weird concept. I think like to go through this world just headbutting creatures. It's just such a creative but weird design choice.
Why did you think you picked this game? Because there's so many games like Echo the Dolphin, for example, Crusader of Senti, the Streets of Rage games, and like comparing it to Sonic and Mario not having that kind of star power to Starfish, but it doesn't have that level of like
Yeah,
fame
no,
about it.
no.
What what
I,
what kind of got you into it? And yeah.
well, I was really interested to play some games from different stages of the generation. So because we got to touch on like games like Golden Axe, which from very start
Mm,
of the generation, and games like Streets of Rage, which are right in the middle. I was kind of interested to get a feel for what the end of the generation was. So I
mm,
um, I had a look at this, and it was in the it's available to play in the NSO Sega Mega Drive library. So and I generally like platformers, so I was kind of interested to see how did the how did the Mega Drive stack up for the platformer genre. And
mm.
it wasn't bad. It was just strangely delightful is what I how I
That's
describe it.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Were there any like outstanding features of Ristar too, like powers or different levels? I didn't get to play it myself, and I hadn't even heard of this game, so I'm kind of curious about like what your experience is like. Yeah, like enemies and stuff like that.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of I guess the most interesting element is that yeah, because his limbs are the main mechanic, there's lots of
Mm,
like grappling and swinging and so it's a bit maybe maybe got some appeal for people who like the Donkey Kong games, for example, in that respect. But it never really took off as a series, because I think it might have been a game on the Game Gear. I think it might have been a port of this one, but because it came so late, it never really got. And in the mid-90s, the gaming was sort of tilting towards the 3D graphics and that kind of thing, like arrival of the N64 and then other systems like that. So I think it never really got the runway. It could have potentially been a popular series it could have been a series if it had maybe arrived at a different time. It sort of arrived too late to really get traction. But it's an interesting one. It's an oddity. It's an oddity more than anything else, I think.
It's kind of cool just to be able to go back and play at them and be like, all right, what was that experience? And there'll be people, no doubt, out there who bought this game. They've got the booklet. It's beloved to them. That's a really cool thing.
It really does feel like Sega's Kirby to me. Like they almost were trying to
that kind of rounded, friendly, approachable type thing. Yeah,
it felt like they were trying to get their own kind of Kirby going, and it didn't really take off. But they maybe left it a bit too late to give it a real good shot.
Oh, Ristar, a really interesting one. Well, we're going to wrap up today's show with my second pick. So there were a huge library of great games. I was very interested in Echo the Dolphin, but I was like, no, I need to try something that I just really felt like playing, because the challenge was to come at this to see, are these games still enjoyable, and to kind of explore the broader Sega Mega Drive library as well. So my second pick was a game called MUSHA, which is the mech that you pilot, and it's a shmup, a shoot-'em-up game from down the top. I haven't played one of these games for a long time. It's not my favorite genre, but I do know that when you go back to old games, or even to a new genre, a shmup, like the shmup genre is a genre that you can just pick up and play. Like, it's very easy. It's a couple of buttons. You can get your head around the controls, the pacing, and get straight into it. There's no kind of like ebbs and flows or long drawn out story. You're in. Like, you pick it up and you're in. So MUSHA, what do I think of MUSHA? I thought MUSHA was really, really cool. Visually, this is probably a game I would have bought for sure on the Sega Mega Drive, going like, this is... So at that time, kind of like for you, Johnny, with Michael Jackson being everywhere, anime and mechs like Evangelion and all that stuff was everywhere for me too, Transformers. So this would have tapped into that side of me and gone, yeah, you should play this. There's very little story. Like, the front just has the mech flying in and this burning screen. And then the very start of the game has you and about 5 other mechs, and they get smashed. They just get destroyed, and you're on your own, and that's it. Here's the wheel. Go drive. Go do your thing. As a shmup, I guess one thing that turns me off shmups often is that they're often ridiculously difficult and you die on one hit. And MUSHA is not necessarily like that, because a really cool mechanic in the game is, in addition to the power-ups like fire and water weapons that you can get, which you see is pretty standard across these games, with MUSHA there is this drone system. So quite frequently in a stage, and I love the frequency of it, is you'll see this like drone fly across that. If you shoot, it drops out these capsules. Pick up these capsules, and they put a little drone on your ship. Now that drone attaches to your ship on the right or left wing, but you can control it you can set the status of it. So you can set it to like rotating around and shooting. You can set it to fly out and shoot enemies. You can set it to shoot backwards, and then you can set it to shoot forwards. So it's great. It really complements your playstyle. Like, if you want to be at the top of the screen dodging bullets, you can set it to shoot backwards. Or if you just want to bulldoze forwards, you can set it firing forwards. And these drones also give you more life. So I found while playing this game, as much as I love the rewind function, Johnny, I'm not going to lie, I was using that on this game and others. It just felt a bit more fair and a bit more enjoyable and approachable as a shooter. The enemy design's awesome. I loved that everything is half samurai, half mech. Well, most of the things are. There are shinobi mechs. So there's a really cool level I just played, have to talk about. It's in the sky. There's clouds. There's really cool lightning effects that come on periodically. And these shinobi would jump. You'd see the shadow come under the cloud, and then they jump out of the cloud and throw these ninja star-shaped missiles. It was just super cool, and I could see 10 or whatever year old me going, "Oh, I would have played Musha over and over just to fight them and to replay that moment." To me, and then the boss fights are great. Like the first boss fight you do, which we've seen on the footage, there is this giant Japanese-inspired castle. It starts moving and it just shoots out of its turrets everywhere, and then the next level is that you can go inside it, and for some reason it's giant, even though it's small on the screen. But that's how it works. And there's a giant weird face monster, as there is with most boss fights of that era, let alone shmups. It's some suits, kind of like cyber face thing that you fight. But yeah, I really enjoyed Musha. Graphically, it was impressive to me, and I think when I got to the second level, which is like it's this lava level where you see these layers of rock and then lava underneath, you feel this sense of height, and then the canyons close a bit. Anyway, look, Musha is really good. Johnny, have you played many shmups? Did you ever hear about this one? What do you think?
I've played a few, but I haven't come across Musha before. And again, I think it was just because I didn't have this system, but it does look cool. Yeah, no, it looks like a fun one to check out sometime.
It was definitely one to go back and play. If you didn't play these games, again, I can see this was beloved at the time. But people of Perth and Beyond, we are running out of time, and I think we've gone through all of our games. So
I got a final. I'm going to put you on the spot, John. So time travel is invented tomorrow. Do you go back and tell young Jonathan to get a Sega Mega Drive instead of a Super Nintendo, or do you reassure him that he's made the right choice?
Yeah, it's such mixed feelings. Like the games on my Super Nintendo that I loved were not necessarily the core Nintendo games like Super Mario World or Star Fox. There were games like Spider-Man, Venom, Maximum Carnage, Mortal Kombat, games like that. Although I did like games like Super Mario Kart, Legend of Zelda. So it's really hard to know. I reckon. Oh, such a hard question, Johnny.
It is, isn't it?
If I look back and I think about, because you were saying that your experience was you were surrounded by Mega Drive people. I wasn't.
Yes.
Everyone had a Super Nintendo.
Really?
Everyone had it, and I came off the nest, so I was like, oh, what's the new Mario look like? Or, Super Metroid was really cool. And the original Metroid was just so obscure to me. So that upgrade was amazing. Graphically, I prefer those games, and the sound effects of those games is better. But gosh, I reckon a Mega Drive would have looked bloody tempting if I was old enough to choose, to understand the market, to know what games are available, to influence my parents to pick that over what was known to everyone in my circle group and friendship group and family group that the Super Nintendo is what you got. Although I would have missed out on Turtles Tournament Fighters, so that would have been hard. Although there's a Sega Mega Drive version for that too. Gosh, Johnny, I honestly do not know. I'm just grateful that I can play these games now, and I really do feel like we need a follow-up special to explore some more of those exclusives or Sega Mega Drive versions. What about you?
Look, I even recognizing there's a fair dose of nostalgia involved. I probably still feel like the Super Nintendo was the superior choice. But I do appreciate that the Sega Genesis, Sega Mega Drive, it came along at a time that probably forced the hand of Nintendo to move a bit quicker with the development of its 16-bit console. Otherwise, you might have had a longer NES generation. So I can appreciate its place in video game history. And as a bit of a segue, March was also a banger month for video game anniversaries.
Anniversary fortnightly shout out, Johnny. Do it.
Not as stacked as February, but I just want to shout out that it was the 25th anniversary of the Game Boy Advance and its launch titles earlier this month. It was also the 30th anniversary of the OG Resident Evil game, which is pretty cool, and OG anniversary of the series. And of course, it was the 35th anniversary of Street Fighter 2. So those of you who, like me, love your video game history, go check out some of our posts and reels on Instagram and Blue Sky. And there's much more of that fun to be had there. But I've had a blast going back to the 16-bit console wars, John. I hope you did too.
It's been awesome. And I think there's still a bit of console war fire within me. I'm not sure which side it burns for. but a little bit's there. It's been amazing revisiting. Shout out to Tim, who couldn't join us again today. People of Perth and Beyond, just a sneak preview because there is a rather large movie coming out. Oh, just a couple of days. Look at that. The Super Mario Galaxy movie. So we'll be covering that in our next episode in a couple of weeks' time and revisiting the Mario Galaxy games. But get in on the console war bandwagon.
We're gonna get back in Mario's good graces after all this hour
Take us back.
Hour of Sega talk.
Take us back. I didn't really like Streets of Rage 2. That's all we have today from the Perth Gaming Crew Show. We do have to wrap up there. If you want to pick up a Sega Mega Drive Classic, I think you can get them around somewhere. Otherwise, they're on the Nintendo Switch online, and you might be able to get a hard copy of the delisted collection for the various modern consoles as well. But that's all from the Perth Gaming Crew Show. Over and out. See ya.